now we're going to talk about what I think is one of the funnest parts of the gardening, and that is planting things. There are two ways to plant. You can plant seeds in the ground, or you can plant transplants in the ground. Transplants, they also refer to as starts. Um, so first off, seeds. Why would you plant seeds? Well, there are some good reasons. Generally, seeds are less expensive than buy-in baby plants. You know, a package of seeds might cost, I don't know, $2.95 for a package of seeds for, say, lettuce. Whereas a six-pack transplants could cost $3.95, $4.95, $5.95, and you've only got 6 plants. So seeds are less expensive. There are a lot more varieties. Most nurseries and garden centers stock just a few kinds, the most popular kinds of lettuce or kale or whatever. You can find a lot more kinds if you look at the seed racks. And another great reason is that seeds, besides being cheaper, usually last for more than 1 year. You're probably not going to use all the seeds in your seed packet. Who needs all that many zucchini plants, for example? So just save them and you can use them the next year. The other option is transplants, and you see some examples of transplants here. On the right are some transplants of tomatoes in a greenhouse somewhere. On the left is an example of a 6-pack of transplants. This happens to be for strawberries that you might find at a garden center or a nursery. A reason to do transplants is that gives you a real head start rather than planting just a seed. So it gains you some time. And it's especially important for things that need a long, hot season, like tomatoes. Those transplants, being bigger, are also better able to compete with weeds that might be sprouting up near them. The transplants are bigger, and so they do better in the competition for water and nutrients. So how do you decide whether you should be doing seeds or transplants? There are certain crops that do best if you direct seed them. And you see 2 examples to the right: beans on the top, carrots on the bottom. And you'll see in this chart, which is in your book, page 54, some examples of things that you would use seed for. Things with large seeds like beans and corn and peas are best direct seeded. Things that are root crops like carrots and radishes and beets are best direct seeded. And then there are some miscellaneous other ones like garlic. You're not really going to plant seeds, but you're not going to transplant garlic. There are some plants that have to be transplanted in our climate. You can't grow tomatoes or peppers or eggplant from seed. Those, no questions asked, have to be grown from a transplant. And then there are a few where you have a choice. You could plant seeds, you could plant a transplant. It's sort of your preference, or how soon do you want it to ripen? You could plant kale from a seed, it'll grow fine, or you could plant a transplant of kale and it'll grow fine, but you'll be eating it sooner. Direct seeding, we're going to talk about, which means putting seed directly into the ground. The first resource is the seed packet. It really has everything you could possibly want to know about that crop and the specific variety you're growing. On the left, you see the front side of a package for tomato seeds from Territorial Seeds. It says it's tomatoes. It says that it's the gold nugget variety. That 60 days means it's going to be 60 days from the time you put out the plant till you can begin harvesting the tomatoes. More important stuff is on the back, more important stuff about planting. In the column on the left, it tells you how deep to plant the seeds, 1/4 inch, what the soil temperature needs to be for success, 70 to 90 degrees, that it needs full sun. That's important. If you have some shady areas, look for whether it needs full sun or can take some shade. How far apart the plant should be in the end, 18 to 30 inches in this case. Yes, that's smaller than what Emily told you it should be for tomatoes, but these, you'll notice on the front, it says compact bushes. This would be a good variety for a container. And it also tells you when to start your seeds or plant them outside over here to the right. If you're going to grow transplants in the house to put out later, it says start those 6 to 8 weeks before your average last frost date. That differs from place to place. Here in Corvallis, the average last frost date's around April 23rd, 25th, something like that. Notice under sowing outdoors, it says not recommended. That's what I was just saying. You don't want to grow tomatoes from out of from direct seeding. At the very bottom, it's not underlined, but at the very bottom, it says usual seed life 3 years. So if you're going to save these, they'll be good for 3 years. If you save seeds, you want to put them in, you want to save them properly. Store those seeds in a cool, dark place. The left-hand side shows a nice tin container with a lid. It would be nice and dark inside. You can just throw all your seeds in a container like that, or a shoebox or something. The metal is nice because it will stay dark and dry in there. Or if you want to get more organized, you can store things by the type of seed they are. You could have a jar or a Tupperware container for the beans and one for the carrots. However you want to do it, however organized you want to get. Whichever method you use, you want to keep it dry in there. So grab one of those little silica packets that comes in your shoe boxes sometimes, always in pill bottles, and throw that in with your seeds to keep them nice and dry. So once you've got these seeds in the ground, what do they need to actually sprout? They don't need light yet because they're not up yet, but they do need moisture, and you'll do that by watering them. But they also need warmth, and that's kind of a critical question. Next slide. How warm is warm enough? How warm do they need to be? This is a table in your book with some examples. It's on page 56. But I only included it here to show you the wide range in the minimum soil temperatures that they require. You see, I've highlighted corn. The soil has to be 60 to 65 degrees in order for corn to germinate. Whereas peas, the other yellow arrow, says the soil only needs to be 34 or 36 degrees. So you could already have peas in the ground now. February often, well, I planted mine in February. So some things like that, onions too, are very early. But that temperature, remember, is the soil temperature, not the air temperature. So you have to know what the temperature of the soil is. If you're going to use the temperature as your guide. This is a picture of a soil thermometer. This is mine. So you just stick this in the ground and it'll tell you what the temperature of the soil is, or you can use another method to decide when to plant. So another way you can tell is to look at the back of the seed package. Seed packages generally describe when it's appropriate to plant in one of two ways. Some seed packets, like the one on the left, says recommended 2 to 4 weeks before the average last frost. Well, we just said the average last frost is around April 25th. 4 weeks before that would be March 25th. So you could put your chard seeds, this is chard, you could put your chard seeds in the ground very soon. Actually, you could do it now. No, it says 4 weeks. You could do it very soon and they'd be fine. They would germinate. Other seed packets, specifically the ones from Territorial Seeds, which are grown, Territorial is in Cottage Grove. So they're in the Willamette Valley. They describe that you can sow these seeds outside from March through mid-July. So you could start sowing these seeds now. They know when the average last frost is around here. So this is, you can't tell because you're not looking at the front. This is carrot seeds. So carrot seeds could be sown right now. How you sow them is up to you. I won't go into this in detail, but there are a couple ways you can plant. You can plant in the traditional rows, but one way you might like to plant, especially if you don't have a lot of room, is to use bands. If you have, say, you want some lettuce, you could plant a square foot solid with lettuce seeds. I mean, not a whole lot, but don't worry about rows. Just sprinkle lettuce seeds in there, let them sprout, thin them out a little bit, and then that whole square foot is going to be full of lettuce or spinach or carrots or whatever you want to plant. The hill method is mostly for big bushy things like zucchini, cucumbers, squash, winter squash. And you can accomplish that by just spacing them out, but I'll let you read more about that in the book. How deep you plant them, well, it says on the package, but just as an explanation for why those depths vary is because the size of the seeds vary. Some of these seeds, of course, you've seen. You know what a pea looks like. You know what a green bean seed looks like, but you've probably never seen a broccoli seed. And it's kind of surprising. Look how small the broccoli seed is in the third row compared to the radish seed in the middle of the fourth row. I mean, you know how big broccoli is and how big radishes are. Look at the disproportionate sizes of the seeds. A general rule of thumb, if for some reason you don't have a packet, maybe somebody gave you seeds, you usually want to plant them about 3 times as deep as the size of the seed, the longest part of the seed. It's on the seed packet, so most of the time you just look there. When you've planted, whether it's in rows or a band or what, do label it. You want to remember that you've actually planted something there and what it is. What's coming up? Is that spinach? Is that lettuce? What is it? So remember to make labels and put on it what it is that you planted and stick it in right where you planted that row. These you don't have to spend money on plant labels. You can just cut up a yogurt container like was done here, or there are other ways to make popsicle sticks if you have those. Anything that you can cut into little slips like this. The other thing that I usually do is I note on the label when it was planted, so I know when I might expect to see something coming up, but that's up to you. The last thing on direct seeding is, like I said in the video, you're going to have to thin. This shows carrots. They're going to come up, they're going to be beautiful, and you're going to have to kill some. You have to be ruthless. If you don't thin your carrots, they will grow, but they'll be misshapen. They'll be wrapped around each other, all curled up. You won't, and they'll be small. So you have to thin them. When you're thinning, cut them with a scissors, with a snipper like you see here, or pinch them with your fingernail. Don't pull them out, or you'll disturb the remaining little seedlings. And what your goal is to get them thinned to the spacing that was on the seed packet. And you see at the bottom of the screen, the part of the seed packet for carrots. You want to get them to be 1 to 3 inches apart. I would usually aim for closer to the 3 than the 1 inch. They're going to be small carrots then. Okay, next. Transplanting is a whole different ball game. You can buy transplants in a 6-pack like I showed you with the strawberries, or you can buy larger plants like tomatoes or peppers in a larger pot. So these are 2 examples of tomato transplants, and you want to pick ones that are most likely to be successful. Pick healthy ones. It might surprise you that the one that says yes is the one that's on the right. The one on the left isn't a great choice for 2 reasons. One is the roots. Notice the difference in the roots between the left one and the right one. On the left plant, the roots, there are a lot of roots, and they're sort of wrapped around and they're coming up the side. this plant, that means this plant is a little root bound. It's been in the pot for too long. Whereas the one on the right, yes, it has some healthy roots, but it doesn't have those big wads of roots like you see on the left. The other thing is that the plant on the left is a little spindly. It's tall, it's much taller than the one on the right, but the main stem is a little thinner and the branches coming off are thinner. If you look at the one on the right, it's got a nice fat, stocky stalk, and the leaves there look healthier than the ones on the left. So that's a, and the little branches coming off of the main branch are healthier too. So that's a better choice. When you plant these tomatoes, you want to plant them at the appropriate spacing, like you saw in the common crop chart and like Emily showed you in the video last week. They're going to look like they're way too far apart, but remember, these tomatoes are going to get big, so you want to plant them probably 36 inches from center to center, or at least close to that amount. These have cages around them because your tomatoes are going to need some kind of support as they grow. This last slide is just to remind you that you don't necessarily have to buy transplants. You can grow your own if you choose. And Judith has made a terrific video on how to do that at home. You'll get a link for that in the chat if you want to try growing some of your own starts for your garden.